Hi, my name is Trainmaster04 and today I'll be reviewing and operating the brand new 3-rail O-scale heritage units in the Golden Spike paint scheme from Lionel Trains.
Union Pacific 4014. Do you read me? Over. Roger that. Union Pacific 4014. I read you. Over. Start up and stand by. Over. Yes, sir. Start up and stand by.
To start off, let me give you a bit of history about the Golden Spike and what it is even about, and then get a little deeper into the type of locomotives and then into the model that Lionel has produced. Now, before I dive into telling you about the Golden Spike event, I do want to mention that I'm actually going to make this very brief, more briefer than usual, due to that I'm actually going to be doing a product review on the new Lionel Legacy Golden Spike Brass Hybrid, the 119 rendition, in the near future. And in that video, I want to make sure that I have enough history material to actually tell about in that video. So stay tuned for that video once that product actually comes in. With that said, let me now go and explain what the Golden Spike is and also why in the world these locomotives are actually painted in these beautiful paint schemes. To start off, the Golden Spike was actually a real spike, and it was a part of the ceremony at Promontory Summit, not Promontory Point, but Summit. And at Promontory Summit, that was the location where both the two railroads came together and actually finished the first transcontinental railroad in the United States. The names of the two railroads that met together at Promontory Summit were the Central Pacific Railroad and the Union Pacific Railroad. The Central Pacific Railroad started their leg of the journey at Sacramento, California, where they had to actually suffer and battle through the hard mountain range of the Sierra Nevada. Whereas the Union Pacific Railroad started in Omaha, Nebraska, and had the easy plains, but still had to suffer hard loss due to Indian renegades disrupting and stealing materials from the work crews on the Union Pacific Railroad. Eventually, both railroads actually came to a hold still when it actually came to the time for them to figure out where they're actually going to link up, and also trying to figure out how or where, when, and so forth that they're going to do it. Eventually, both railroads came to an agreement and agreed on meeting up and connecting together at Promontory Summit, which is located north of the Great Salt Lake in Utah and kind of northwest from Ogden, Utah. Since this was the very first and the completion of the United States Transcontinental Railroad, both railroads at Promontory Summit held a enormous celebration of only 200 people, and they brought together two special locomotives that were painted and dubbed the Golden Spike locomotives, or the Transcontinental locomotives. As stated, both locomotives, one from the Central Pacific, one from the Union Pacific, were meant to represent both railroads finally coming together, both technologies, both halves of the country coming together and being unified by a Golden Spike, hence why they are called the Golden Spike locomotives. Now, I will be giving some more history information on the Golden Spike, the Transcontinental Railroad, as well as the Union Pacific 119 when I do the review of the Brass Hybrid that is coming out in a few months. But anyway, back to the locomotives. So, these locomotives were meant to be the representatives of both railroads. Hence why both locomotives, or the models in front of you, are actually pointed nose to nose. This is actually pretty prototypical because when the celebration was taking place at Promontory Summit and both locomotives were brought together, the Central Pacific locomotive was coming from the west to the east to meet the Union Pacific locomotive from the east to the west, and came together in this head-to-head formation, basically in the sense of shaking hands with each other on the accomplishment that they made by joining together and creating the Transcontinental Railroad. Now that you have better knowledge about what the Golden Spike was and a bit of knowledge of the locomotives and why they were used and painted in this way, let's get a little deeper into Lionel's models in the sense of statistics, reasoning, and also a bit of facts about it. Both of these locomotives were recently issued in the 2019 Volume 1 catalog and started showing up around mid-October of 2019. Now, you may be wondering, what is the reasoning behind Lionel making these locomotives? Well, let me take a minute and actually tell you why. Now, 2019 actually marked the sesquicentennial or 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike event. Now, Lionel, being as smart in marketing as they are, capitalized this by producing a number of scale and semi-scale products to commemorate this event. A part of this were actually these two locomotives. So, these two locomotives were a part of that collection of sesquicentennial stuff that Lionel was actually producing. Now that you have a better understanding on the reasoning behind why Lionel was actually producing these locomotives, now let's get into some of the statistics on both of these models. To start off, both of these locomotives are made by plastic and die-cast metal and also have both molded in and separately applied details all around them. In total length, both of these locomotives measure a total of 19 inches, and because of that length, these locomotives have a minimum curve radius of 0.54. Under the hood, these locomotives sport the Legacy control system, as well as the Legacy sound system, and to control both of these locomotives, you can operate it via the Legacy Cab 2 controller, the TMCC Cab 1 controller, Bluetooth, and also conventional by having a transformer and some track. Also, underneath the hood, both of these locomotives have two medium-sized flywheel motors for one motor per powered truck. Now let's get a little bit deeper by me showing you the separately applied and molded in detailing on these locomotives. Now, do take note that actually both of these locomotives are identical in the sense of the detailing as well as the control systems and sound systems inside of both locomotives. The only difference between the two are the paint schemes. And I will also be showing you both of those paint schemes after I've shown you the detail on one of these locomotives. Looking at the front of the Union Pacific number 60 rendition of this locomotive, you can see that at the front of the locomotive there is one of two operating electrocouplers, and these electrocouplers can be thrown by the Legacy Cab 2 control system, the TMCC Cab 1 control system, or the Bluetooth Lionel Line Chief app that you can get from the Apple App Store or any other app store. Past the electrocoupler, there is a separately applied plow that is painted blue and also has some nice fancy golden pinstriping on it. Coming through the plow, you can see that there is two sets of three brake hose detailing, and the ends of them are actually painted silver for some better detailing. Above the electrocoupler, there is some more separately applied detailing. In this case, it comes in the form of the electrical connection from one locomotive to another, and behind that we have a separately applied coupler cup bar. Moving up from the pilot area, you can first see that there is a separately applied and gold painted handrails, and also are joined with a separately applied chain. Looking towards the front of it, there are a pair of separately applied track lights that actually do come on when the locomotive is in operation and flash when you sound the horn. Getting a better angle of the nose of this locomotive, you can see that there is some gold painted steps that actually lead to the platform, the front platform on this locomotive, and also some separately applied grab irons on the side of the locomotive and a ladder stanchion. Molded into the front body of this locomotive, there is a silhouette of a door that leads into the cab, And also in the middle there is the front headlight, which does come on when the locomotive is in operation. And past that, you can see that there is some more separately applied ladder stanchions, and also right on the front there is the Union Pacific flag and shield logo painted on the nose of the locomotive. Looking at the top of the nose and top of the cab of this locomotive, there are some more molded in and separately applied detailing all around it. For example, there is some separately applied grab irons along the nose of the locomotive, and also some molded in detailing to represent the sand ports on this locomotive. Looking above the nose, there are some windshield wipers that are painted silver and separately applied. And behind the windshield wipers, there are two clear plastic inserts that represent windows. Above the windows, there are two separately applied grab irons that are painted blue. And above the windows themselves, there are two lighted up number boards that do light up when the locomotive has power. Looking on top of the cab roof, you can see that there is a whole lot of molded in detailing that is actually very prototypical for this type of locomotive. Looking towards the side, but down to the bottom, looking at the front, you can see there's a better view of the steps that lead up to the platform in front of the locomotive. Towards the side, there is one of two powered trucks on this locomotive and a beautiful red paint scheme, and it also has an array of both molded in and separately applied detailing. Looking above the lead power truck on this locomotive, you can see that there is a golden painted stripe that actually runs along the length of the locomotive, and to me it looks very well against the purple-blue paint scheme that again it runs along both sides of the locomotive. Also, on the side of the locomotive, you can see that there is a lot of molded in detailing, and also a number board underneath the cab window. In this case, it is number 60, since this locomotive represents Central Pacific number 60 from Promontory Summit. Something else that is actually on this side of the locomotive, and also on the other side, is this little decal right here. Now, if you're wondering what this decal is, it is actually a little commemorative deal saying that it's basically giving the dates of when the Transcontinental Railroad was completed and also when it became the 150th anniversary for it. So in this case, right here on this side of the Golden Spike, it says 1869, then it goes in, and then in the middle, the Golden Spike, and then 2019, representing the sesquicentennial or 150th anniversary for the Transcontinental Railroad. Looking towards the cab window on the engineer's side, you can see that there are clear plastic inserts for all the windows, and also in the middle window section, there are two separate inserts that actually do slide back and forth, representing the window closing and opening. Also, there's also these two separately applied clear insert sections that actually go back and forth as wind visors. And also above the cab window, there is this separately applied metal sun visor to protect the crew leaning out from the cab window. Looking past the cab area, you can see that the blue-purple paint continues along, and also some more separately applied and molded in detailing. Starting towards this side of the locomotive, there is a painted in UP shield symbol, as well as their slogan, Building America. In front of that, there is a locomotive length long handrails that are separately applied and gold painted. Also, on the body shell itself, there's a whole lot of molded in detailing in the form of grates, as well as servicing doors to the engine. Looking down below, past the walkway that runs along the length of the locomotive, you can see that there is the huge fuel tank for this locomotive. Now, on the fuel tank, it is actually made of die-cast metal and holds the single large speaker that produces all of these sound features in this locomotive. Also on the gas tank, there's a whole lot of separately applied and molded in detailing. For example, there is 2 air tanks that have separately applied pipes leading in and out of it. Looking towards the back of the locomotive, there is still a whole lot more molded in detailing, such as the service doors to access the engine if this was the real deal. In the middle, there is an American flag painted onto the body shell of the locomotive, which is actually very common on Union Pacific locomotives. Past the flag, there is a Jupiter decaled onto the side of the locomotive, and it's very nice that Lionel actually was able to do this, since that the real Jupiter actually had this decal or this painted on the tender of it, since it was a steam locomotive, but in this case they were able to do it at the rear end of the diesel. And also, again, it's nice that they were able to do that since this is in this area, since this is actually a very rough surface. Looking towards the bottom half of the locomotive, you can see the end of the fuel tank on this locomotive, and also the second rear powered truck, again painted in red, and also again having a whole lot of separately applied and molded in detailing. Looking above, there is the radiator vent or radiator area on this locomotive. Now, painted on the side of this cover, it actually says CPRR. I'm sorry you can't fully see it due to the light, but the CPRR is actually a bit of an homage, going and thinking back about the Central Pacific Railroad, since this locomotive is representing the Central Pacific Jupiter. And actually on this model, this radiator vent cover, again, is a cover really, because it actually exposes the on-off switch for the smoke and Bluetooth, as well as the program run switch. And it then can go right back on, in which it is also held by magnets. Looking at the back of the locomotive, right away you can see that there is the second operating electrocoupler, also another set of 3 separately applied brake hose detailing, another coupler cup bar, and also another electrical cord connection. Looking above the electrocoupler, you can first see that there is another golden painted handrails on the back of the locomotive, as well as a separately applied chain in between them. Looking on the back body shell, there's some separately applied grab irons, and in between and behind the grab irons, there is the number 60 trimmed in gold paint. Above that, we have some more molded in detailing right here, as well as the backup light for this locomotive. And also, this backup light will come on when you put the locomotive in reverse. Looking at the top of the locomotive, looking towards the back going to the front, you can see on top of the radiator cover there are 2 separately applied grates, and also towards the middle a grate that covers 2 separately applied metal fan blades, as well as some more molded in detailing in the form of rivets. Looking past the cover, there is the smoke exhaust stack for this locomotive, and this locomotive actually has an operating smoke unit or fan-driven smoke unit, and in order to fill the smoke unit with smoke fluid, you just pour the smoke fluid directly down the exhaust stack. Looking past the exhaust stack, we have a separately applied horn, as well as some more molded in detailing around it, and going a little forward, again, more separately applied detailing, and a little bit of separately applied in the form of hooks like right here, here, and here, and then finally ending at the cab, a whole lot more molded in detailing in the form of parts on the roof of a normal diesel locomotive. Now that I've shown you all the details as well as the paint scheme on the Jupiter, now let's take a look at the 119, but this time I'm just going to show you the paint scheme instead of the detail itself. Looking towards the front cab and nose area, we have one of the many murals on this locomotive, in which, interesting story, on the real 119, the these murals, specifically this one, was covered up by Union soldiers and so forth when it on the steam locomotive or the real prototype. And so when historians were trying to recreate these locomotives, they had a hard time trying to figure out what this would be. But a famous artist named by the name of Ward Kimball, who did the murals on the replica number 119, actually concluded after doing an extensive amount of research that it was probably going to be Jim Bridger, the Mountaineer. Now that you've had a little bit of taste of history, above that, here's the 1869 Golden Spike to 2019 logo that we saw on the Jupiter. Past that, we have the number logo for the 119 itself. Again, a whole lot of gold leafing, and also a brown paint scheme around the cap, in which on the replica and possibly on the original 119, it was painted in this kind of canary brown look. Looking past the cap area in the front, again we have a U.S. flag painted onto the side of the locomotive, and also we have the tender section, or tender painting section, on the rear end of the locomotive, where again it shows the 119 with all the gold leafing and pinstriping and so forth, and also another mural on the side of the locomotive. And again, similar to the Jupiter, this locomotive, it being the representative of the Union Pacific Railroad, it says Union Pacific Railroad on the side of the radiator. Finally, looking at the rear of the locomotive, again, we can see that there is still the same type of separately applied and molded in detailing compared to the Jupiter, but what's different is the maroon red paint scheme all over this locomotive, but also the 119 painted onto the back of the locomotive. Now that you've seen all of the separately applied, molded in detailing, as well as the beautiful paint schemes on both of these locomotives, let's start one of these up and let me show you some of the sound features in these locomotives. Now that you've seen all of the separately applied and molded in details on one of these locomotives, as well as the paint schemes on both of these locomotives, let me now start up one of these locomotives and show you all the sound features that are included in both of these locomotives.
This is the dispatcher. Do you copy? Copy that, dispatcher. I read you. Over. Please start up and stand by. Over. Acknowledged. Let's get to work. Out.
Let me now show you some of the sound features in this locomotive. Again, both of these locomotives have the Legacy rail sounds in them, so let me show you them. Starting off with the horn. Now, the horn, like all Legacy locomotives, including steam, diesel, it is quillable, meaning that I can change the tone, pitch, and so forth on to the horn. Now let me show you the bell. And also the RPM rev up and rev down, since this is a diesel locomotive. And also, here is the fuel tank refill sequence.
Fill her up! I got a full tank of fuel. Over. Acknowledged. Out.
Sounds. But before I play a few, let me just make a note to those who actually do not like the crew talk sounds. I understand that you may not like them and you may not enjoy them due to how you feel about them, but there are still those who do enjoy them to have fun with these locomotives and get a better experience with them. So still, I'm going to play them. If you want to skip this part of the video, go all by all means.
Tower, I got a full tank of fuel. Am I clear to make a move? Over. Roger that. Take the green. Over. Roger that. Clear to the outbound. Here we go. Out. Dispatcher, made up and waiting on a clear track. Am I clear to the outbound? Over. Roger, your track is clear. Dispatcher, over. Roger that. Cleared to move. Here we go. Out. This is the dispatcher. Please stand by. Over. Copy that. Sit tight. Out. Tower, what's the plan? Am I clear to make a move? Over. Signal indication. Over. Okay. Sit tight. Out.
Well, I've got some cars coupled up, but before I actually let this train go, I do want to mention that I do not have a lot of modern era cars in my collection. Instead, I do have a lot of steam era freight cars in my collection. So, the consist of cars that you will be seeing is primarily made up of steam era type of freight cars. But I do have some modern era freight cars in the mix. So, without further ado, here are the Union Pacific, Jupiter, and 119.
Dispatcher, made up and waiting on a clear track. Am I clear to make a move? Over. Roger that. Take the green. Over. Copy that. Clear to move. Here we go. Out. Tower, here we go. Over. Roger that. Have a good run. Out. Dispatcher here. All clear inbound. Over. All clear inbound. Out. Dispatcher here. Switch a line. You're clear inbound. Over. That's great. Approaching now. Out.
Well, it is about time for me to go and end this video, but before I do, let me answer the questions on how much do these locomotives cost and what is my personal opinion about these locomotives. To start off, the MSRP price for one of these locomotives just by itself is right at $600. Now, you may be able to get a better deal by going online or even by your local hobby shop, but if you do go online, you could definitely probably get a better price if you go to trainworld.com or Charles Rowe. And like usual, I'll leave a link in the description for both of those websites. Now, let me tell you about how I feel and what's my personal opinion about these locomotives. Well, right off the bat, they are a pair of beautiful locomotives. They are just very well done, in my opinion. They are beautifully made and they just have a beautiful paint scheme, and I would say they would be great for any hobbyist that wants to actually celebrate the 150th anniversary any day of the week for the Transcontinental Railroad, but in a modern twist, if they actually have a modern styled layout. So in this case, I would say it would be perfect for anybody because of that. And also, to wrap things up, these locomotives are just phenomenal because the paint scheme by themselves, not including the performance, in which the performance of both of these locomotives is very good, but the paint scheme alone, they are very, very well done in the sense that they are so stinking close to actually matching the replicas up at Promontory Summit, meaning the steam locomotive replicas up at the summit. Well, it's time for me to end this video and call it a day, but before you leave, if you would like to see more product videos or more interesting railroad videos on new products, please press that like button and also put down in the comments what you would like to see. And also, if you do not want to miss another video like this or future videos that I produce, please click on that subscription button, because that would allow you to be able to get a notification on every new video every time I'm live streaming and doing basically anything on YouTube every time. Well, my name is Trainmaster04, and I'll see you next time in the near future.